I can see that.
Wow. And they had the big worm too, right? That, like the brain Starship Trooper thing.
Or that scene always creeps me out in that movie.
When it sucked the brains out of the person's head?
Yeah, that's gross.
And
come on, Verhoeven.
Another funny story is when the first, which I love this scene, so Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, Valentine and Earl, they find out that the roads are blocked, people have died, and they're on these horses to go to the next town to get help. But they're ambushed by a graboid and they end up running, but they jump through this concrete, I don't know, drainage area, I guess. To prevent, and the tremor graboid runs into it. Now, initially, the guys who did the effects for it, they didn't want to use a lot of goo because they had just gotten off of Aliens, and they're like, we had to deal with so much slime. We just never, ever, ever want to deal with slime again. But when they filmed it, it didn't look right. So the guys are like, crap, we have to use slime. So they loaded that thing up with slime, and they're like, never underestimate the value of slime in a movie. So I kind of thought that they tried to avoid it. But then they ended up just going, yeah, we got to make these juicy.
Well, and they don't, I mean, they kind of progress when it comes to the slime factor. I mean, when that first one dies, because it runs into the wall, for that drainage ditch, like what you say, we don't actually see that much. We see the concrete crack. We see one of those, worm-like things that comes out of the mouth, kind of slide out of the crack, and it's dripping goo and all that stuff. And we don't actually see the full monster at that point. They take their time before they show it to us. Now, eventually, as we get to the end of the film and the thing, plummets off the cliff and it explodes in this big, thing of, it looks like they just like had Jello and V8 juice, stuffed into this weird thing and they just let it blow up. It gets pretty slimy there, but, I like that, to some degree you kind of have the Jaws approach here where we don't, see the full monster right away, and even when we do see it pop out of the ground, it's in fleeting glimpses. I actually like that the first thing we see are the little tongue things and we think, oh, well, these are the monsters. And then we realize, oh, no, that's just a smaller part of the bigger monster. I actually think the tongues are more intimidating than the full monster. Yeah. I mean, they're devilish looking. They've got like little horns on them and things like that. They're gross.
Are they sentient? Are they?
I wondered the same thing. Do they have like their own mind, or how's this whole thing work? And that would have been a better step for the evolution thing. Don't give me these chicken looking things. I'll have the little worm tongues crawl out and they become something else. That would have been a cooler way to take things.
Well, that's horrifying. That'd be so scary. Like juicy worm things eating you. Smart.
Oh, man.
They were pretty sassy. Like they had some noises and they were, they had to have had their own thought process, right?
Well, you would think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they seem like they're able to, sense where things are. And that's another thing. I mean, the whole way that the beasts are finding their prey is that they're hearing the sounds and hearing the movements above. But how does that translate? Is that just the main big graboid that senses that? Do the tongues sense that on their own? How do the tongues know where to go when they're out of the ground and they're, wiggling around and such? There's certainly a lot of science questions that don't get answered here, but I don't mind because it's a big gross monster and it's cool.
Hey, how about this? Let's take a real quick break and then we come back. We'll talk more Tremors. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks. And so we were just talking about, I don't know, the giant awesome monsters that we dig. But I think you're also right, though, that this movie works because of just the really likable characters. And I liked Rhonda a lot, played by Finn Carter. I thought she was a kind of a breath of fresh air in this movie.
I was going to say, we haven't really talked about her. We talked about all these other characters and didn't talk about the third lead in this. And I like her too. She's, she's got a lot of spunk to her. And I think it's a good contrast. She's this college student who's got a lot of, smarts and all that. And then you've got these two simple guys that, like we said, are working out in rural Nevada and things like that. There's a good dynamic there. And I also like that they don't kind of belabor the romance thing, with her and Kevin Bacon's character. There's just enough of it there that, it's fine. It's two characters thrown into extreme situation. It's like Keanu and Sandra Bullock in Speed. It's the same type of thing here. You got these two characters that experience something weird together and the romance blossoms out of that. And I guess, do we spoil things for the future films?
Yeah, do it.
We do find out that their relationship succeeds and births a daughter who ends up fighting graboids in the 6th film. So
What was I gonna? Oh, they had test screenings for this movie. I don't know if you saw this when you were researching this, and they had a version where I don't think they kissed, the two of them, and the director said that the audience was really annoyed by that, and they were screaming like, "You better kiss." So they went. Maybe they already had that and they added it back in, but the audience was just screaming "kiss her" during this movie. So people were pretty invested in these two, I guess. But they worked well together.
Yeah, I think so.
And I liked her pole vaulting. She was responsible for one of my favorite scenes in a monster movie, the pole vaulting.
The pole vaulting is fun because it's just so darn clever. And, it's also one of those things where, again, out on a hike or something, you see different rocks. This movie has popped into my mind and I go, gee, if I had a pole, could I make it between these rocks?
And while the two guys are arguing, she's the one figuring out the plan. And then I like when they finally escaped out of the car, how she's driving with her hands and they're not helping her. And she's like, guys, can you help me out?
Yeah.
And then she ends up later on, she saves him by kicking the water pipe and drawing the graboid away. Yeah. No.
Yeah, they come up with a lot of ingenious things for drawing the graboids away. And I guess that's another thing that as the series progresses, they kind of start to run out of things to draw them away. In fact, some of the later films, I think, kind of start to repeat some of the things that we've seen before. But in this first film, when you've got, like you say with the water, or they send the little tractor out, things like that kind of draw the graboids away. You're thinking, boy, in this little town where there's not a whole lot there, they're being very resourceful.
Yeah. And do you not get tense every time you see that little tractor or lawn or whatever, tractor just going down the road? You know it's going to flip, but you're like, don't flip. Right. And then it flips and you're like, no. Oh man.
Well, and all the other little things that they put in there to raise the tension. And again, I mean, it's hard to say it's a terribly tense movie because, like I say, it is pretty lighthearted and, it's never too terribly scary. But there are things that pop up that you just go, oh, no, like when the little girl starts going on the pogo stick. Yep. All these other guys have been in the store and they've been watching what the graboids are doing. And then suddenly the little girl from Jurassic Park's out there on the pogo stick. And you're going, what? Come on.
And she has the headphones on, too.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, man. And then that guy goes on the tire. There's some pretty inventive kills in this movie.
Oh, the tire one is bad. That's Nestor, isn't it? Who dies in the tire, and you're just going, dude, that's not gonna do it.
And I do like, I've never even thought about this before, but like the rules change a lot in this movie, but it doesn't matter because it's a weird creature feature, so you have no idea what the rules are for these monsters. That thing reached out and sucked him through a tire, but other times it couldn't get other people. But I mean, that's just what the narrative has, and it's a fun visual seeing a guy getting eaten through a tire, than dragged through the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, but let's see, where else are we at with this movie? I told you I have 12 pages of notes on this. No, but I think you're absolutely right though. What makes this movie work though is the Fred Ward Kevin Bacon friendship. These two guys really sort of work their butts off in this movie to make it interesting. And they have, I don't know, I like their dynamic a lot. What was it, like an uncle or like old? He's older. Kevin Bacon's younger. It's not a father-son. How would you explain the relationship?
Well, that's the thing. I kind of wondered what exactly brought these two guys together. Because like you say, they're not two guys that are the same age. They wouldn't have been like, buddies since they were young type of things. One guy is, Kevin Bacon. I don't know how old Kevin Bacon was when he made this, but I mean, for all I know, this is not that many years off of Footloose. He was still in high school back then in my mind, even though he'd already been in college in Animal House many years before that. Yeah. But anyway, Kevin Bacon's the young guy. Fred Ward's older, so I mean, you get the impression that these two guys just like ended up on some odd job together at some point, and neither one could ever quite let the other one go for some reason. They just, figured out that they worked well together and they could make some bread, if the two of them combine their efforts. And I totally buy what's going on there with them. I don't know why they ended up together. Part of me is a little curious, but it's not necessary. There's just these two guys who have this kind of symbiotic relationship. They just go around and find jobs to do and they survive together because of each other.
And then you have their rock, paper, scissors that they play. And then he's trying to get him to hook up with, Rhonda? Or Earl's trying to get Val to hook up with Rhonda. So he's like looking out. He gives him advice. I also like the scene where he's like, you're not thinking we can get paid today and not tomorrow. And then later Kevin Bacon's like, we plan ahead so we don't have to do anything today. Is that what he said?
Yeah.
So they're not really are they on the same page with that?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of times where they're not quite on the same page as each other, but they still work well together. I mean, you do definitely get the impression that it's almost like a mentor thing going on with Fred Ward's character. Like he's like, I'm going to mold this young guy into my own image type of a thing.
Now, so now that you've seen 3 and you know that Miguel survives, did you hate that Miguel dies in the third one?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. One of the things that frustrates me about the third one is that they do bring back these various characters, but I don't know. It was kind of like just like, hey, look, it's so and so from the first movie. Remember? Yeah. And I'm kind of going, it doesn't pay off well. And yeah, seeing Miguel go in the third film was really disappointing because he plays an important role in the first film, and he's a type of character where early on, first time watching this movie almost 30 years ago, I kind of thought, well, he's going to die probably. And he doesn't. He sticks through with things. He becomes somewhat heroic in parts of the film. So yeah, to just kind of, chuck him away then in the third film was disappointing.
Yeah, that bummed me out. You know what? I'm putting that last now. I'm going exactly with your list now. That bums me out. But and also when you watch this movie for the first time, and when the graboid busts through the Gummers' basement and they just blow it away with like probably 20 different guns, like how happy did that make you? I mean, that was just like it was just target practice.
Yeah.
It worked out perfectly for them, of course. But they just stand there shooting the thing, and he busts out an elephant gun.
Yeah. It's a fantastic scene. And, again, thinking in terms of what would they do differently now, I don't see that scene showing up in this film if they were to remake it today, because, they'd probably see it as glorifying gun culture or things like that. I don't know. But, I love the fact that this creature that has been, plucking people out of off the ground and swallowing them whole, gets more than he bargained for here because he picks the wrong basement to bust into.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, just watching Reva like shoot away at that thing. That made me so happy. Do you think they could have defeated the graboids if they stayed there?
Well, but, we keep saying that the graboids keep getting smarter with everything,
Yeah.
So I think the other ones would have seen what's going on there and would have known, well, this is not what we got to do. So, yeah.
They would just wait them out or gone somewhere else?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they showed themselves as being clever enough. I mean, early on in the film, they've got our 3 leads trapped on the rocks, and it looks like this whole strategy is just to starve them out,
Mm-hmm. Do you think
they're smart enough to do that?
Are they doing this for food, or are they doing this to kill anybody who knows what they are?
You know what? There are times when you're watching this where you think, well, the graboids are just trying to survive. Okay, they got to eat. What are they going to eat? Like you say, they're going to pluck a bison off the range or something like that. They're looking for a little variety in their diet. I don't know. That's why we need some bacon in the diet, I guess. Whatever. But there are also other times in this where you think, I don't know that they're doing this just for food. They may be doing this for sport. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, or maybe they're just annoyed that one of their, because these things are very old. Like we can assume that they're super old, right? Just how big they've gotten?
Well, yeah. And I mean, they talk about them. I mean, they use all kind of scientific terms to describe what kind of creatures these are. So yeah, for all we know, these can be, I mean, they've got that kind of hard looking skin like a tortoise. Or I mean, tortoise lives hundreds of years, these things could have been lurking around all this time. Could be the same graboids that were in that part 4 prequel that are showing up here today. I don't know.
So they're bummed. So they could be mad that one of them died, well, they wouldn't have known that one ran right into the concrete, would they have?
Oh, they don't have eyes, but they got to have some way of figuring this out. I don't know.
Did that tremor knock those rocks down on purpose, or the graboid? Remember with the construction workers who jackhammers one of them?
It might have.
Or was that a happy accident?
I wouldn't put anything against against these creatures.